All right, we are back, and it's time for our second installment of everybody's favorite segment, Facts Are Your Friends, where we have simple conversations about complex ideas. Is this everybody's favorite segment? I'm going with that. I'm in the greatest segment ever produced, ever. I don't know, that thing Jay Leno used to do on the street was pretty funny. That was great. But a quick second place to that one. Facts Are Your Friends, simple conversations about complex topics. All right, so the other day I was being interviewed on a guy's podcast. The guy was awesome, real hospitable. We were having a good time, and he was like a guy. And in my new book, I have a line or a paragraph where I'm talking about I don't think Gen Z, I don't think millennials are this dysfunctional, weak, lazy group of people. I don't think that they are cowards or somehow inherently deficient or broken. And he said during the interview, like, there's this perception, right? They're just weaker and softer, and if we could just get back to the old days. And he said, you don't really believe that, do you? Like, I know you wrote that in your book, but you don't really think that, do you? And I thought about the Gen Zers that I know, and I thought about the millennials that I know. And I said, yeah, I absolutely believe that. And he's like, come on, man. Seriously, look around. And I get where he's coming from. And he was looking at the data like everybody else. And he's looking at the mental health crisis and the rise of anxiety and the rise of depression and the rise of loneliness. And even our own Ramsey Solutions research. We did a big research survey here on people's mental health and shows that Gen Zs and millennials are more likely to struggle with mental health challenges than other generations. And if you take that one step back, right, look at the number of kids going to law school, the number of kids going to med school, look at the obesity rates and the plummeting physical fitness and the rise in diabetes. I mean, you could point to all these things and say, yeah, see, they're just sitting around, they're playing video games, they're being lazy, they don't do crap. Yeah. That's one side. It's one side of it. Having worked with them for the last 20 years, just walking alongside them, thousands and thousands and thousands of them, and then being steeped in the data and the research. Here's another perspective. The moment they were born, they were told, hey, by the way, by the time you're like 30, the climate will have killed us because all these people have screwed up the environment, so you're going to be dead. You're probably not going to have kids. The moment they were born was in and around 9/11, and not only were they around 9/11, but they have been around adults who have lost their freaking minds, who stay glued to these little cellular devices, who are obsessed with dramatic, sensational news stories and the rise of 24-hour news and the rise of the murder podcast, where when our regular day doesn't suck enough, let's listen to how somebody else's life sucks even worse. And they've been told that they can't trust the news, their churches, the government, their parents. You can't even trust yourself. Why? Because you have a diagnosis. You've got something wrong with you. They've been the guinea pig for world-changing innovations like social media and smartphones. They've been diagnosed with things that nobody heard of 100 years ago. They didn't exist. And some of that's good, actually. Some of that we've been able to go, hey, that's actually trauma. This is actually depression. This is an important thing. But some of it has been madness. Some of them have just been doped up because they can't sit in a room for 9 hours and not move. They've had processed food shoved into their faces since they were born. They've had PE and movement and laughter and play and joy taken out of the schools. They've had athletics taken away. They've had art taken away. They've had music classes taken away. They don't go to concerts, they just stream them. Because mom and dad are working 2 full-time jobs plus 2 side hustles, and I don't have time to take you to that. We're not going to do that. So when I look at it from that perspective, of course they're completely burned out. Of course they're exhausted and fried and anxious and depressed. Of course they go towards a video game because the real world they've inherited is on fire. Literally on fire. It takes an especially strong, resilient, creative, and adaptable generation to take on what the world has dumped in their laps. And yes, I know. My dad told me he used to have to do nuclear weapon drills when he was a kid. He did. Because there were nukes in Cuba pointed right at, he was in Houston, pointed right at him. I get the world's always been bad, but there's been anchors in education, in we're going to be all right, in an American spirit, in or a whatever spirit is. There's been collective theology that binds a group of people together and says, hey, there's something bigger that we're serving here. And this generation has none of that. All they have is caustic. It's all coming down. And so when I see a kid in a local university, when I see a high school kid making it work, it's incredible. And when I see kids that are struggling under the weight of the nonsense, my heart breaks for them. And pointing fingers at them and calling them lazy, that's not going to help. Yelling and screaming at the news, not going to help. Sitting down and saying, hey, I'm sorry that we've given this to you this way. Let's do something else. And if you spend time with young people, it's incredible. They can be extraordinary in their vision and their hopes and the way they think, well, I guess this is how the world we've been handed. This is how we're going to have to make do. And so my biggest takeaway from this whole exchange with the interviewer was this. We need to stop defining strength as being silent, stoic, and working 90-hour weeks and just flexing and crushing. On the flip side, we need to stop considering any sign of struggle or dysfunction a weakness. Instead, maybe strength is choosing to move forward despite the uncertainty, to grieve despite the pain, to choose healing despite the fear. I went to college and got out in 2000. And the world was it's all like, you can do anything. And now to graduate after 2 years of having to do online, back in school, online, back in school, school's canceled. By the way, you're just going to be dead from climate change anyway, and plus inflation's going to kill you. And by the way, there's going to be a World War III, and you're going to get nuked. And so what are you even doing whatever you're doing? Go play Fortnite and just move on with your day. To graduate college in that and say, no, I'm going to keep pushing forward. I'm going to change the world. That, my friends, is strength. That, my friends, is resilience. That, my friend, is saying, fine, not by my hand, but in my lap. This is what got dropped here. I'm going to make do. And not only am I going to make do, I'm going to make changes, and I'm going to make this thing better. So hear me say, stop throwing grenades at other generations, if you will. They are people like us trying to figure it out. And I'm grateful for the young folks figuring it out. And if you're a young folk and you're stuck and you don't know what you're doing and you found yourself 100 pounds overweight, or you don't like yourself, or you're in a marriage that you didn't know how you stumbled into it, reach out and ask somebody for help, because there's a different way to do this. And if you're 55 or 65 or 45 or 35 and your whole identity is based on, I'm telling you, it's going to come down. Stop. Reach over and tell somebody, I'm not okay. Reach over and say, hey, you know what else is cool? Rest, holding hands, love, compassion, kindness, patience. Those are virtues too.